Films Online, TFO for short. TFO was founded almost on a whim by Professor Nikhila and myself in June 2020 during the lockdown. Since then, TFO has had uninterrupted discussions on films from all over the world every Saturday at 9 p.m. on Zoom. It is a group of film scholars, researchers, students, teachers, and anyone passionate about cinema. It has been our practice to invite people to select and lead the discussion of the chosen film, which we watch in our own time and place. On some occasions, filmmakers, editors, and cinematographers have also joined our sessions. Aparna Sen, Amol Palekar, Girish Kasarvalli, and Adur Gopalakrishnan, to name a few. We have held film festivals such as East European, Iranian, Women's Cinema, and others. In the month of June each year, to celebrate our anniversary, we hold a smartphone short film making contest for students. In September 2024, we held our first offline event, an international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era, continuities and discontinuities, in collaboration with Forum on Contemporary Theory, Baroda. In this evening's session, we discuss Mrinal Sen's Bhuvan Shome. The film was suggested by Vijaya Singh. Vijaya is an associate professor in English at PGGC 11, Chandigarh. She is the author of 3 books: First Instinct, Level Crossing, Railway Journeys in Hindi Cinema, and Park Mein Hathi. She has been a Fulbright Fellow at New York University and an Indian Institute of Advanced Studies Fellow in Shimla. Her areas of interest are film adaptations, Hindi cinema, Hindi literature, and Dalit writing. Welcome, Vijaya, and over to you. Are you there, Vijaya?
Yeah, you have to unmute yourself.
Vijaya, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, right. So I'll sign off from the mobile and join on the computer because I think you can see me there now.
Okay.
Right. Can you see me? No.
I think you should just stick to your phone, or maybe just go ahead, because you'll be sharing your screen in any case.
Right.
Yeah.
Is anything visible? I think this is really.
Yeah, the Zoom page is.
Yeah, but then your PPT is not. Open your PPT. I think it will be
She
visible.
has to first log into Zoom on
Oh, okay. You haven't logged in through the laptop. Okay, right.
No, but I have logged in because I can see myself here.
No, through your laptop.
Yeah, through my laptop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then maybe you have to share screen. No, but then you
I'm
are. That
trying
is.
to share my screen, but something is not right.
You had just done it now, right? When
Earlier,
we
I
were
know,
trying.
I
Yeah.
had done it. Mm, this is I really don't know. Something has gone wrong. Um, layout and options.
You can just open your PPT, close this window, open your PPT and share screen.
Right.
Yeah. So since your screen is visible, you can just close down this window and open the PPT and share that.
Right. Can you see it now?
Yes,
Level?
yes.
Yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Finally, thank God. We're already very late, so let me just begin by saying thank you so much for inviting me to TFO, and I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really sorry for this glitch. So without wasting any time, uh, let's get into the film. So as you can see from my screen, these are, some of the stills from the film. And Bhuvan Shome was made in 1969. It is a Hindi film, black and white film. I just thought, I'll go over some of the things that you perhaps already know, but just to sort of get into the discussion, to just, begin at the beginning, right? And of course, here is Mrinal Sen, the director, young Mrinal Sen. And here is Balai Chand Mukhopadhyay, also known as Banapul, who's the author of the story, Bhuvan Shome. So the film is based on, adapted from this story, also by the same name, Bhuvan Shome. And here is K.K. Mahajan, the cinematographer of the film. And of course, these are the people who worked on the film. The sound was done by Loken Bose, Shyam Sundar Ghosh, Dev Prasad Datta, and music was given by Vijay Raghav Rao. Editing was done by Gangadhar Naskar, Dinkar Sethai, and Rajendra Naik. And cast, of course, Utpal Dutt, Suhasini Mulay, Sadhu Meher, Shekhar Chatterjee. And of course, it won 3 national awards in 1970 for Best Direction, Best Feature, Best Actor, Utpal Dutt. And, the film also has many firsts, right? It was the first film to be financed by Film Finance Corporation in 1969. And it is considered to be the first film of the Indian New Wave movement. And it is also K.K. Mahajan's first feature since graduating from the Film Institute in 1966. And this is also Suhasini Mulay's first film. And this is also Amitabh Bachchan's first film in terms of his voiceover. So here are some quotes from Rinal Sen. Two on Bhuvan Shome. I just thought, let's, look at these quotes and we can bring them back when we are discussing the film. So these two quotes are, Mrinal Sen had this to say about his own film. He said that this is a burlesque and inspired nonsense. And Satyajit Ray said, this film is big bad bureaucrat reformed by a rustic belle. So, he said, so Satyajit Ray had this, in his book, Our Films, Their Films, while discussing New Wave, Indian New Wave, he talks about how in Hollywood, the producers would ask for like a line, that would contain the 7 words. They would say, give us the sort of the crux of the film in just 7 words. So here is Satyajit Ray giving it to us in 7 words: big bad bureaucrat reformed by a rustic belle. So this was also perhaps his way of sort of commenting on the film, and we can come to that later again. Of course, all of you have seen the film. Still, I think it might not hurt to just do like maybe 30 seconds of a brief summary of the film, and this is from Mrinal Sen's website, where this is how the film is described: that he's a lonely widower, a proud old man, and a disciplinarian looking back on the trodden path, strewn with staunch determination and drab attitudes. He's a thoroughly unenchanted man. It's interesting the use of the word unenchanted. Takes a day off and walks into another world, a new world consisting of simple, uninitiated village folk. There he rides a bullock cart, encounters a buffalo, and finally a village belle. Off to duck shooting amidst the sand dunes, suddenly everything lights up. A day's exposure to a host of alien situations deepens his sense of loneliness. He realizes that he has no escape from the world which he has built for himself all these years. Now, so, I mean, in just like, I just wanted to sort of refresh our memory about the film. And I was then thinking, what is the way? How do we read Bhuvan Shom, and I'm using the word read, even though, of course, film is audio visual medium. But I'm taking my cue from James Monaco's famous book by the name of How to Read a Film. And also, of course, to say that, read, using the word read, not necessarily literally, but also metaphorically, and also in terms of, trying to gain a deeper understanding of a text, right? So looking at a film as a document, as a text, how do we approach this film? So I thought, well, these are some of the ways in which Bhuvan Shom may be approached. We can engage with this film in terms of, historically, because it is considered the first film of Indian New Wave. And we can engage with it in terms of, like, the New Wave features it inaugurated, its place in the parallel cinema movement, in terms of its experimentation with cinematic form and content. As an adaptation, as I mentioned earlier, it is based on Banapul's story by the same name, and its place in Mrinal Sen's journey as a filmmaker, its influence on films that came after it, and Satyajit Ray's critique of the film. Now, another important question that comes up is this: that how do we approach this film after 56 years since it was released and achieved not only commercial success but also critical acclaim? To sort of tell you how successful it was, there is this anecdote that I would like to read out to you from Mrinal Sen's memoir, where he says that, once he was traveling in Mumbai, and, there was this cab driver and he was talking too much. And so to shut him up, he asked him if he had seen Bhuvan Shom. And he was absolutely certain that, the taxi driver would not have seen the film. But he was taken by surprise because the taxi driver asked in return, is it the film about the birds? And so on, when he finds out that it is the same film, he says, this is a class film. And then when he comes to know that, the person who's traveling in his cab is Mrinal Sen, the director, he becomes quiet for the entire, rest of the journey. And he also refuses to take any fare from him. So I think that tells us about the popular success, of the film, which is important because often parallel cinema is accused of, being a niche kind of a cinema, not not very popular with um, not very popular with the what do you say, the mainstream the mainstream in a sense. So this I think gives us a sense of, that this was a film that was watched and watched widely, and I think that's very important. Now, I was also thinking that, I mentioned some of the ways in which we can read Bhuvan Shom, but also in terms of, what are the ways, are there any other ways in which we can read the film? Not just as a new wave film, and not just as a story of a hardened bureaucrat's encounter in the countryside, other than as a burlesque, or, there's this, in the first, I think, 6 or 7 minute, there is this dialogue that delivered by Utpal Dutt, where he says, duty first, self last. And I was just thinking that in the film, it is a kind of an ironic statement, because ironic because Utpal, the character of Utpal Dutt is actually someone for whom this is actually literal, it's true, but it is ironic in our times. Because I'm just wondering, uh, where does this motto stand in terms of, like, today's globalized and capitalistic world? Um, so I have, identified two ways of reading this film, and we can discuss the other ways in which you approach this film or engage with this film. So for me, these two ways sort of stood out, and I would like to engage with this film in terms of these two, um, what do you say, these two parameters. So one is that Bhuvan Shome is a film that captures the transition from rural to urban via the mobility paradigm, more specifically in its use of the symbolism of the railways. And it is a critique of alienating modernity, and you know has a desire to return to the village, to simpler things. And the other is that it is a story of a beautiful failure. And failure is conveyed, through lyrical images and soothing music. And all expeditions of the protagonist fail. In fact, it is only through failure, in letting go of control, that the protagonist is humanized. And that, for me, is sort of, that is how I would sort of engage with the film. Uh, if we look at the opening of the film, then we find that right from the beginning, and of course, I'm reading the film in terms of, how the two um, broad strokes that I have, given out. So one is right. So from the beginning, when the credits roll, what are the things that come to our attention right away? One, of course, is the sound of the railway engine. It's a very, it's a, um, it's a familiar sound, and it is also a sound that has been there in Hindi cinema and other cinemas also. And the sound of the railway engine has been incorporated in so many songs, film songs about on railways. So it's a soothing kind of a sound, even though this is the sound of an engine. And there is a kind of a rhythmic pattern to it. And as the sound, with this sound in the background, we see these parallel tracks, right? And and you can see that this scene has been shot from the uh, from within the engine. I think that is, because you see that the it's not the rail tracks are the tracks that are moving ahead, and there is a kind of an urgency about the the rail tracks, its movement, the train's movement on the tracks. And so, it gives us a sense that, here is an important person who's traveling, and this is his point of view. Now, I thought it was very interesting how, this scene ends, and the immediate scene that follows it is the scene of Jadav Patel, who is the played by Sadhu Meher, and who is, as we know, the ticket collector, who is engaged to this, village girl, whom Shom is going to meet later on. And he's getting, his beard shaved as the train approaches the station. And I thought, this is kind of whimsical. Why would he want to place this shot, like, it's almost like a mid close up of this man getting his beard shaved? And I thought, what does it mean? Is it like, is what is the purpose of it, is it like a is the filmmaker trying to tell us that this is a kind of a rite of passage into adulthood for Patel, who's an irresponsible, greedy type of a person? And what is also interesting is that, the man who is shaving his beard is a barber, and he is, wearing the kind of clothes that people in Saurashtra wear. where, the entire film was shot. And we see that this is the garment that all the men in the village are seen wearing, and soon Bhuvan Shom too, will change into this garment. So, in a sense, it's almost like, is he mocking us? Is the director mocking us? Because is it that it's going to, because roles are going to reverse, because it is Bhuvan Shom who's going to be cut to size by the village and the rustic belle, and it is Jadhav Patel who will have the last laugh. And so, the first, I just wanted to sort of mention the first and the second sequence, and to sort of, open it up like that. And you would have noticed that in the first few minutes of the film, Mrinal Sen uses freeze frame for delivering inner dialogue. And it is used almost like a question and answer with the narrator. And the narrator, as you know, is Amitabh Bachchan's voiceover. So whenever there is a question that is raised by the narrator, Bhuvan Shom replies to that, and when he replies, his frame is frozen. Now, this is considered by many people as a kind of an innovative use of different cinematic techniques, and Bhuvan Shom in that sense was, as I said, in terms of like its cinematic form, and inaugurating new features of the Indian New Wave. This was considered as a very interesting method of filmmaking, where you're not just dealing with images, video images, but also stills. But the stills are not just there to to show something frozen. They're there to convey the inner dialogue that is taking place. And interestingly, I was reading that Satyajit Ray himself, though he was a bit critical of the film, somewhere I was reading that he himself was inspired by the animation and the uh, and also the voiceover, because in Shatranj Ke Khiladi, you see something similar taking place. Now, also, the first, right, so the film itself is divided into two parts, right? The first 15 minutes are devoted to discussing bureaucrats, Bhuvan Shom's life as a bureaucrat, his eccentricities, his role as a husband and as a father. Of course, we know that he has failed in all these roles, except, of course, for the fact that he is considered a very successful bureaucrat who is hardworking, sincere, and honest. But of course, no one likes him. Uh, but of course, he doesn't seem to care that no one likes him, as the voiceover tells us that his wife was so oppressed by him that she probably died early because of that. Of course, it's not mentioned as clearly, but she leads like a miserable life with him, and his own son does not live with him. So, so we find that Bhuvan Shom is now going to a village somewhere in Saurashtra for a hunting expedition, and he is leaving the big bad city of Calcutta, or as the narrator tells us, Vichitra Bengal, where there is chaos, marches against government, strikes, exploding bombs, agitated mobs. And, so the village becomes that space, which is desired, a space after, the kind of hectic city life. This is a space where the self is to be recovered, a place to regenerate tired nerves and a move away from the constant stimulus of the city. So, as I was saying, that, the first 15 minutes of the film are devoted to the city life, in a sense, or the city life of a bureaucrat who is now, of course, I mean, we see certain stills and also video images of the city of Calcutta, and then, of course, Bhuvan Shom, who's in the train and who's moving, who's coming to this village for his hunting expedition. So the film, in a sense, can be seen as a film which talks about the return to the village, right? And this return to the village is framed in terms of, like, the how the village is the place where the city bred person is going to recover his self. So right, so we find that once that city part is done, when we move to the village, then the main focus of the film is in terms of not just the life in the countryside, but it's contrasted with the hectic pace of the city, with the vast expanse of the desert, the seaside, the migratory birds, and there is a kind of a contrast in terms of the violence of the city, the accumulated violence of the daily existence of the city, and the sort of peaceful, serene existence of the village. But of course, violence is transported to the village in the form of Bhuvan Shome's agitated body. Because we see him wearing this cartridge belt, and it has enough rounds to kill the entire population of the village, because we don't see too many people. And he's carrying this rifle. And but interestingly, of course, the moment he arrives, he's challenged by the male buffalo, Sheetal, who is Gauri's pet, the village girl. And I was also thinking it's interesting that, the name Gauri is also the name of goddess Parvati's, many names, and buffalo is sort of part of Shiva's entourage. So I think there is also some kind of a mythical sort of, flavor to it. So, he's saved by Gauri, from the buffalo. And we can see that he's completely out of his depths in the village. And his authority as the top bureaucrat and hunter is completely undermined by the buffalo that gives him a chase. And he's reduced to a laughing stock. And also, what is interesting is that, the he's in fact, what is happening here is also this, that the authority of Bhuvan Shom, the bureaucrat, is undercut by kind of reducing him to a kind of a childlike figure. So you see there are these shots where he's traveling in a bullock cart and he's kind of seen sleeping in the bullock cart, and it's possible to kind of see this bullock cart. It almost seems like a kind of a baby's pram, who's kind of dozing off to the strange lullaby of the cart driver. And so and of course, as a child in the village, he's incapable of distinguishing between real and false danger, and all his bravado with the gun is brought to an embarrassing end as the buffalo comes charging towards him. And he's almost reduced to being a clown. And it's almost as if the village is kind of taking revenge upon the city. And Mrinal Sen inverts some of the popular stereotypes of the village and shows the village girl as neither dumb nor incapable of taking care of herself. And the villagers also are shown as, good humored people, tolerant of the city folk, who are cut off from the world of nature. In fact, in one of the sequences in the film, you see, like, I mean, this is something that you would have noticed, that the villagers smoke pipe, right? Like the cart driver is smoking a pipe, Gauri's father is smoking a pipe. So in one of the sequences, you see the cart driver is examining Bhuvan Shom from a low angle, as if, trying to figure out who is this strange creature. And, then of course he meets Gauri, and she becomes his guide through his hunting expedition. And Bhuvan Shom, whose ideas about hunting are entirely bookish, learns a thing or two about hunting from her. And she tells him that, the birds of this coastal village will fly away on seeing someone attired so strangely and unfamiliarly. So she makes him change into the clothes of, the kind of clothes that people in the village wear. Sorry. And, then she takes him to the place where he might come across birds. And so she tells him that, for you to, be able to hunt, you have to, maybe you should become a part of the landscape, become a tree. And so, he has to give up his identity as a city bred important official of the village, sorry, of the railways in this coastal village. And now he's dressed as a Gujarati nomad. And so he has to abandon all his city attire, his, clothes of a hunter, and all the knowledge that he has garnered through books about hunting. And so in some ways, you could even say that the hunting expedition is actually a hunt for his hidden self, a self that he has not come face to face with in a long time, his softer emotional side. And interestingly, the bird that he finally manages to shoot after a long and tortuous process of dressing up first within quotes as a native, then by becoming a tree, it turns out that the bird is alive. It's not he I mean, it's a failure. He couldn't even shoot down a bird. And I think again you would have noticed that in one of the sequences, and I think I'll take you back to this image of Gauri, where if you look at this image, where Gauri is walking on the, sand dunes, and she's walking to check uh, if the birds have arrived, and she's carrying Bhuvan Shome's gun. So it's interesting how she takes the gun away from Bhuvan Shome, and the gun is sort of, turned downwards. And I mean, one could say that, gun like a phallic symbol um, is sort of, you know, turned into like a something that is harmless, because she just turns the rifle away towards the ground so that it cannot shoot, it cannot, so that you can't shoot with it. And so right, so as I was saying that the bird, it turns out, is alive. And so Bhuvan Shom, who wanted to sort of shoot birds and turn them, stuff them, maybe because one of the sequences when he visits the den of one famous shooter, you see that it is, there are all these stuffed animals there, and so one wonders that maybe this is one of his plans, that he's going to shoot some birds and stuff them and sort of keep them somewhere in his room. But of course, that plan fails. The bird is alive. So in some ways, the expedition fails, but there is also a kind of a victory. And the victory is that, you know, that that he has actually, that he does not kill, right? Because killing, of course, would mean a kind of a something dehumanizing. And here he is sort of in search of himself, and so the recovery of the bird and is also kind of a recovery of the the self. Like the self is of course very is very is injured, and it needs nurturing. So eventually, of course, he leaves the bird with Gauri, and right. So I was just thinking that there
laptop
are
on नहीं
other.
हुआ.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Vijaya.
Right. No, I just thought someone was saying something. So, as I was saying, that in terms of like the phallic symbols, not just the gun, but also the railways themselves have been considered, the sort of the locomotive itself is a kind of a phallic symbol. And so, in a sense, one could say that the phallic symbols, they are brought under feminine control, through Gauri's insistence on carrying the gun, and also the sort of all through it, Bhuvan Shom is continuously sort of his power as a bureaucrat is sort of just stripping away. And uh, of course, in the meanwhile, we know that he finds out about Jadhav Patel, the ticket collector. And so, some people have suggested that maybe there is a kind of there's a kind of an underlying eroticism in the sort of way in which Gauri and Bhuvan Shome's encounter is created. Of course, Mrinal Sen was totally surprised with such a reading, but he talks about it in one of his interviews that some foreign critic told him that it's like a beautiful love story, and he was really taken aback by that. So, but I suppose there is a kind of a fascination, you know, in him for this, young, spunky girl. And there is a kind of a shock, and maybe we don't know, maybe there's also kind of an envy that, okay, here is this Jadhav Patel, this corrupt ticket collector. Is she going to marry this person? Um, but of course, this itself also becomes, a space where Bhuvan Shom comes to know about his own reputation as a boss. How much people hate him, and so this trip, it becomes this moment of self-knowledge and self-critique. And so eventually, of course, he returns from the village with his humanity restored somewhat, and he decides not to sack Jadhav Patel. Instead, of course, he transfers him to another junction. And so interestingly, or ironically, one would say that the reinstatement of Jadhav Patel into the service of the railways humanizes the bureaucracy of the railways. And because, I mean, he's totally corrupt, we can see that. But at the same time, Bhuvan Shom is this dreaded boss whom no one likes. Everyone speaks ill of him. Um, so, um, it's interesting that we can also sort of see this desire of Bhuvan Shom to, sort of go to the village on a whim to shoot, birds. It's a kind of a release of something, irrational in a man who is so rational. But in fact, this irrationality in some ways actually releases him from his own strict rationality, a rationality that has turned into boorishness and insensitivity towards his own family and, his people who work with him. And so, for Bhuvan Shom, this experience of walking in the wilderness and contact with humans other than from his own workforce, restore to him a broader and a more compassionate view of humanity. And so the film, in a sense, creates the village as imparts to the village a kind of a rejuvenating function. And the village of Bhuvan, interestingly, is not the oppressive space of tradition as it usually is in Indian cinema, in Indian literature, and in fact, it is a space that opens for its visitors a capacity for peace and, a reinstatement of the simple joys of life in terms of just watching the flight of birds, the expanse of the open sea, the beauty of sand dunes. And, so the village in that sense is the space where the intellectual who's cut off from his community is revived. And he returns to himself. And also he returns to the city humanized with a new outlook. So, I mean, that is the way in which I would sort of read the film. Right? That a story of failure in terms of, the expedition fails, but the failure is actually something that opens up a way for something better, for a deeper understanding of life. And generally one sees that there are these you can say that there are these parallel movements in cinema, especially in early cinema, where you see that people are actually going to the city. And I can name a few films like that. So, for example, there is this film by the name of Railway Platform, This is Sunil Dutt's first film, and I think it was made sometime in 1950s, perhaps 1955. Again, so in the film, people are traveling to the city. The journey is from the village to the city. Then, in a film like 27 Down, I'm told that you have seen that film. Again, it's the journey from the village to the city. And the village is like this very oppressive, space where, there is the worst kind of atrocities are committed, and people want to just escape the village and move to the city, which is seen as the space where, liberty, freedom, and all kinds of other modern expectations and desires will be fulfilled. And uh, then there is also, I think, there would be other films also. I think, uh, I'm just thinking what other films are there. Yeah, I mean, especially in Hindi cinema, there are many films. I mean, I can only think of right now. I can only think of Railway Platform and 27 Down. So I would say that here there's a kind of a reverse movement where the protagonist is traveling not from the village to the city, but returning to the village from the city. Having spent a considerable time of his life in the city. 25 years in the case of Bhuvan Shome. And so, for example, in 27 Down, the protagonist Sanjay is kind of not able to free himself from the iron cage of the railways. He's caught in it, he lives in it. He's probably going to die in it because he keeps thinking, he's traveling in the compartment, and um, he keeps waking up and he keeps asking, what station is this? And he's reminiscing about his life. And so he's kind of caught up in that iron cage. He's not able to free himself from that. And so he's also equally alienated in this modern existence. But there is no village is not the possibility for him. He hates the village. He doesn't want to go back there. Similarly, yeah, I mean, another film that comes to my mind is Devdas, where again, the protagonist goes to the village to the city from the village, and that's a tortuous journey for him. Um, but there is no, I mean, the return to the village is not possible for some of these heroes. Whereas in Rinal Sen's Bhuvan Shom, return to the village is sort of the central kind of an idea, and it is an idea that is conveyed through humor, through uh, a kind of a gentle and a calm look at the countryside, to sort of I mean, the film, even in terms of its pacing, you would have noticed that the first 15 minutes of the film are very hectic. There's the movement of the train, the movement of the tracks, and then the scene completely shifts. There is a kind of a slowing down. The film, there are these long takes and long shots where the people are just walking. Gauri is walking, and Bhuvan Shom is just, he's just waiting for her to walk to the other side and then to come back, and the flight of the birds. So all of that is done with this, to capture the beauty and the sense of serenity and calmness of the village side, coastal village, and all of that. So, so there is no, in that sense, there is no hatred of the village here. There is a kind of a love for the village. And of course, we can argue, we can say that, this is a desire to return to simpler things, from the sort of more difficult life of the city. But at the same time, I suppose that would be only one kind of a reading, because the village in Indian cinema or Indian literature, or even in Indian, sociology, and in the life of thinkers, how they have looked at the village, it is very, very central. It, of course, in the time in which we live now, the idea of the village has undergone a lot of change. Uh, but the village is very central to sort of the thinking of philosophers, Indian sociologists, Indian political scientists. And so it's interesting how, Bhuvan Shome is, is kind of giving, it does not sort of, dismiss the village. It does not sort of, show the village as a place of, um, as a regressive place. There's something here which needs to be retrieved. So, right. So I find that, also, of course, this village is, as I was saying earlier, is very different from the kind of village that you see in Satyajit Ray's Pathir Panchali or Dilip Kumar's Ganga Jamuna. And, this is a different kind of a village. And so the village in this film, it becomes a space for contemplation, not only on the forms of nature, but the self and the other. And, this contemplation, Mrinal Sen would say, is something that is required to free humanity from the rational utopia in which it is, caught. And it is required to, suitably rehabilitate this, humanity that is sort of at war with itself. So I think with these words, I would like to maybe stop here and then listen to, what your views on the film, and maybe we can discuss some of the points that I have completely missed, and you have, you must have, what your thoughts about the film. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vijaya, for that really detailed reading of the film, which looked at from the largely from the point of view of the urban and rural divide, and you also brought in other films with with the railways as a central metaphor, a central theme in the film. So that was a very interesting way to look at this film, and it's now open for discussion. Uh, while you gather your thoughts, I thought let me just say a few things about how I looked at it. Um, I was just wondering if this really strict bureaucrat who is bent upon punishing this railway ticket collector for collecting bribes returns at the end of the film um, somewhat in by his standards at least morally compromised, because he doesn't really punish him. He just sends him off on to another station on a new posting. And that letter which he writes, the Jadhav Patel writes to Gauri. In fact, he's very happy with the posting because he says it's a bigger junction, and
Hmm.
bigger junction means bigger bribes.
Right.
So, a person who, in the beginning of the film set out to put an end to this kind of corruption only
Hmm.
ended up, giving him a better and a bigger chance at more corruption. So that way, I
Hmm.
thought, irony was a main structural device that Mrinal Sen has used in the film.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you. Absolutely. That's a very, very good observation. And I think that is the only way in which one can understand, because um, like one wonders, like whatever happened, has he just Does it not matter to him anymore? And should it not? That's why, I was also underlining that quote earlier, where he says, duty first, self last. You know, that is his.
Sorry to interrupt, Vijaya. You can stop your screen share.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, yeah, I mean, we can continue talking. I'll just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Geeta, can I come in?
Yeah, sure. Please.
Yeah, so a very wonderful a way of talking about this film Vijaya from particularly the perspective of what the village serves as for this hardened bureaucrat in the film. The transition from the city to the village and what it does to him. In addition to what you have said, I was also thinking that a very central aspect of the film is also the transformation of a self which is kind of mechanized. Bureaucracy also mechanizes, like the railways and the rhythm. It's also very mechanical to a life which is somewhat unpredictable, unknown, and also very close to nature.
Right.
So, for instance, that scene where the character of Suhasini Mule walks, and it's kind of mapped onto the walking of the bird, so as if she is an element of nature. And where Bhuvan takes on the leaves and the attire of a tree, so as if recovery of that natural self. And you can see that he's clearly uncomfortable because he quickly sheds it once its
Right.
task is accomplished. So I thought all these were very interesting metaphors that the film uses to talk about a kind of nature versus culture in or nature versus modernity, mechanization, that a thematic as well. And very, I mean, for me, rewatching this film, I think for the third time, again, it clearly shows how, though Bhuvan is supposed to be the protagonist of this film, it's really the screen lights up the moment Suhasini Mule comes
Right.
onto the stage. So this is so much a film that she holds, and it's a riveting attention, at least for me. So
Absolutely.
that's what
Absolutely.
I thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments, because you're absolutely right. Those are very good observations. And interestingly, Suhasini Mule, she was, she was, she was, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Suhasini Mule was actually in her high school, when she was actually taking her high school exam when she was signed up for this role. So she was herself very young. And of course, Satyajit Ray had something very nice to say about her. And he said that the I mean, Satyajit Ray's position vis-a-vis New Wave was that that Bhuvan Shome was a success, not necessarily because it's an offbeat film, but because it works with the elements of mainstream, and one of those elements is, like, a star quality that an actor has, and he feels that Suhasini Mule has that star quality, and he describes star quality as as the presence of a person on the screen, that even though the person is really not doing anything, you just want to see that person. So yeah, so Hasni Mule, absolutely, fantastic.
Any other observations, comments? Anyone would like to come in? No one?
Ma'am, good evening.
Yeah,
Good evening.
please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. When you were presenting your uh, uh, the the presentation, ma'am,
Hmm.
I think the voice is echoing. I don't know. So, like when you were presenting the film, I was very much, a short story by Rabindranath Tagore came to mind.
Hmm.
Shudito Pasana, like the
Right,
hunger
right.
of stones.
Hmm.
And I was wondering if this film, the directors, the writers have been inspired by Tagore's work. Am I audible, ma'am? Pardon?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Because there are so many themes that I just have noted down that I found are very much, like they are just the same. It feels like sort of an artistic adaptation of the film. For example, when I'm saying you said desire to return to the village, embrace the rustic. So the same thing happened. It is the same story, that the story begins in a train,
Hmm. Right,
and
absolutely.
the
Yeah, yeah.
description of the train is given in a very vivid way. And
Hmm.
the when the story is being recounted, there is again the protagonist is a bureaucrat who is
Hmm.
very sort of a upright straight type of a person who gets
Hmm.
shunted out of a big sort of Hyderabad. I thought it is during the British age, the
Hmm.
before
Yeah, yeah.
independence, and he goes to
I've
this
read the story. Hmm.
yeah, so he goes to this village, and there again, when you told about, for example, oh yeah, so then protagonist, you have mentioned protagonist who goes on to become like the beard cutter. It is like the same thing when the outside the palace, the madman says, "Don't go inside; you will become like me," and
Hmm.
the protagonist thinks, "Oh, it will not happen at all." But the same thing, somewhat, it sorts of happens. So there are like so many things I've noted down when you are talking about the protagonist becoming like a joke, a clown.
Hmm.
So the
Hmm.
same line comes to my mind that the bureaucrat was very anglicized,
Hmm.
and when he came near the palace, a wind swept away like his Tula topi, the English topi,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
text describes this event, the sound of the wind, as if it was a woman laughing at him.
Right. Yeah.
The same again, like the stereotype of a village woman. The same thing happens, but with the exotic feminine figure, like carrying a dagger. So again,
Hmm.
the village woman is portrayed as some sort of a submissive figure, but
Right.
here it is not so. Same thing like the feminine dancer from who is a slave. She's
Hmm.
portrayed as carrying a dagger. So a lot of things, like if I go on, the whole thing will extend a lot. But I would like your opinion on this, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Uh, I never thought of that. Um, of this comparison. It never occurred to me, uh, but I mean, now that you're mentioning it, I think one can look at both the stories in terms of, um, in terms
Mhm.
of parallels, similarities. I think the
Mhm.
only difference perhaps is in the fact that, you know, uh, is in the fact that it is this story is located sometime in the 20th century, right?
Mhm.
1956, and the earlier film is, I think, perhaps late 19th century, if I'm not wrong.
No, ma'am, it was not a film. It was more like a short story. But
No, no, but there's
again,
also a film on it. It's also been turned into a film by Tapan
okay,
Sinha. Yeah,
okay,
there is a film on that story.
yeah, ma'am,
Khudi to
because you,
Pashan, Hungry Stones.
yes,
I
yes,
mean, the
ma'am, like,
story, I mean, yeah, I think the story is located in late 19th century, if I'm not wrong.
yes,
And
ma'am.
yeah, and
Uh,
this is like sort of more sort of mid 20th century. So in that sense, more contemporary, more modern. Um, and I
so,
think in that story, the idea is also about engaging with the past, not
yes,
just like
no, yeah, yeah. No,
a
like
kind of
in the
yeah.
if I may, ma'am, like in the movie, it is about going to the traditional, not the bureaucrat. You're talking about the railways again, a figure of colonialism, if we can take the railways as so, and the
Hmm.
same thing in the story as well, like the subjugated here, like the rustic, the traditional Indian is subjugated by this India, this anglicized India, this half colonized Indian elite, you can say, the bureaucrats and all that, who are having their own mannerism, the guns and all that. And in the story, the same thing happens that here he's an anglicized bureaucrat who who seemingly, like I think it was Muhammad Shah, some like that king's palace, and
Hmm.
it is like in antiquity, it is in ruins, but that sort of how do I explain it, that weak, that impotent type of culture has subjugated the powerful, like that, and the protagonist letting go first towards in the film towards the rustic lifestyle, and in the novel, like in the short story, towards the sensuality of the palace, towards the exotic, and like it is like the story becomes interesting when the protagonist lets go and accepts defeat
Hmm.
in front of this woman, or the figure of a like of pertaining to an old age, like old era, be it of the Mughals or something like that, or the rustic India where everyone is like oh god, it is like a rustic thing. So something like that. I would.
Hmm. Hmm. I would say that in the Khudito Pashan story, you know the the protagonist is also actually I think he turns a little mad. No, something happens to him. His
Yeah, so here, like the Tagore
yeah.
played, I think he did some sort of a literary thing where, like the rule in across the literary movement was to have a proper ending. But what happened before, the ending could start, the train journey ended and the person who was narrating left away. So there is always in a limbo what happened in the future. So Tagore just broke away from the tradition of giving it a final end of what really happened, to the
Hmm.
imagination of the reader.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, I mean, writers do that because they don't necessarily have to follow rules. And yeah, so I mean, my reading of the film, sorry, the story, and I read it like really long time back, is that I think he's not recovered from that encounter. You know, he's become a little. I think it affects him psychologically very deeply.
Mhm.
Whereas I think, of course, he's traveling in the railways, and the story takes place in the train compartment. That is right. I mean, the compartment was used, in 19th century fiction and later 20th century cinema, especially early cinema, as a space where, stories could be told, where these encounters with strangers take place. And,
Mhm.
people who would never sort of come across each other in the same space are brought together in the space of the compartment. So,
Mhm.
it is used as that kind of a setting in many across the world, across the globe in a sense. The railway
Mhm.
compartment is used as that kind of a setting. So, of course, I mean, Tagore is also sort of, bringing these two elements together, the modern and the pull of the past, right?
Mhm.
At the same time, I mean, I think no doubt that in his story, the railways. I mean, of course, the railways were brought by the English. It is a colonial symbol, but at the same time, it is a. I mean, the railways. I mean, railways are far more complex. So I feel like can we just reduce them to just one symbol, which is okay, that it was merely a colonial, symbol. Of
Yeah,
course,
the
it was
symbol
that.
of
Yeah,
colonial
it was
authority.
that. I mean, one cannot deny that. I mean, if you look at Gandhi's critique of the railways in Hind Swaraj, and also the nationalists talking about how, the railways were, sort of brought to India to plunder India's wealth, and all of that is of course there. I mean, one can't deny. But also remember, Gandhi himself is using the railways, even though he's actually sort of critiquing the railways, but he uses them himself, to travel through the length and breadth of the nation. So there are these multiple ways in which the railways are used and thought about and discussed, and of course they caught the fascination of both literary figures as well as filmmakers, because it's such a it makes for such great cinema. Just the train, if you remember Satyajit Ray's Pather Panchali, where you have that famous scene where the train enters the frame, and the children are playing in the field, with the kash flowers, and you see the train. It's a wide
Evokes
shot.
a lot of emotions, for everyone, every Indian.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Not just emotion. What I'm trying to say is that
From
there is.
can we
Sorry.
take more questions,
Yeah, yeah,
comments
please.
from
Sure.
others?
Mm.
thank you, man.
Thank
Would
you.
anyone
Thank you for
else,
your question.
would anyone else like to come in now?
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello, good
Good
evening,
evening.
Kusul.
Ma'am, I just have one question because as you have mentioned the word village,
Village, right?
so yes, in this, it's like a journey of a person who's a bureaucrat and who came
Mm.
back to the village.
Right.
I feel like maybe I am wrong. Isn't it like the concept of the village is a kind of always romanticized because
Hmm.
it's like the other way? Because what I
Right.
feel is village is a space where you can say it's a community which is having an upper hand, and we in a globalized world, we on the one hand we move towards cities where individuality, it's the individuality of a person that is given more importance.
Right.
But on the other side, uh, here we always in the movies which I have seen in the late 90s, um, it's always the village that was romanticized. Why is it like this? Because I feel that in the village, it's always the community which is having upper hand. Individuality is completely, it's like it's completely gone.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
So what's your take on this?
Right. So, I mean, of course, this is a dilemma, right?
Yes.
In terms of like the life and the contrast in terms of the life of the village and the life of the city. So for the person who lives in the city, there is always that fascination and also that nostalgia about, as you very rightly said, a kind of a romanticized space where the precisely the community is desirable, because the individual is alienated in the city. The individual desires the life of the community. So that fascination, I think it's a kind of a dilemma. It's a modern dilemma, and of course the village is a very oppressive place. I mean, that's how it has been described in so many of novels. I mean, look at Munshi Premchand's novels, or look at Fanishwar Nath Renu, and also Mulk Rajanand's novel Untouchable. And so many novels,
Yes.
or for that matter, Sharat Chandra Chatterjee, right? I mean, village is that kind of an oppressive place where the individual has, no sort of voice, and the individual has to submit to the community, and so therefore, for the person from the village, there is always the attraction for the city. because the city has this, at least in the, um, has this fascination in terms of individuality, freedom, openness, which of course everyone desires. Uh, but at the same time, the city is also can also be romanticized, because city life is quite alienating. So just individuality or freedom alone is not enough. I mean, if you look at the life of people in the cities, in fiction or even in cinema, it's not an easy life. There's loneliness, there is there is a different kind of a suffering. So I think it's a kind of a dilemma that's always going to be there. It's in terms of choices also, like what is more important. So in for example, in a film like Bhuvan Shome, he does not decide to settle in the village. He just
Mm.
goes to the village and comes back.
Yes.
uh, so uh, there are these forays into sort of the village and the village life, but then there is the return to the city. But it is required, and I'm also thinking of Raymond Williams' book, Country. What is it called? Uh, the country and the sorry, the city and the country. Does anyone remember? It's that famous book, no? Raymond Williams, very
Uh,
classic, iconic film. Sorry, text. Um, I think that's what it's called. Anyone remembers it?
no, ma'am. I don't know the name of that book.
The country
The
and the
country and
city.
the city. Yeah, the country and the city. Yeah, where of course, he's also sort of looking at, like, how the country um, is, it remains in the imagination as a place for retreat, for recovery of the self. I mean, if you look at early 20th century English writers also, someone like M. Foster, his novel Howard's End,
Yes,
there is that country house that is so desirable, and there is a kind of a battle that's going on, or like who's going to inherit that house. And the countryside is always described in like these beautiful descriptions of like quiet scenic places where life is not hectic. And interestingly, another important thing is, especially when we are looking at films that deal with the theme of modernity. Of course, all films do in some ways, but in particularly in terms of like uh, you know uh, what do you say, like, as I think someone used the word mechanized life, a kind of industrial modernity. So there's always also that play of how the city is the place of constant stimulus, right? I mean, there is no, like, the nerves are never rested. They're constantly stimulated because there is sound, there is so much, visual. There's just so the senses are bombarded, in terms of sound, in terms of visual cues, in terms of, like, how the body is always in motion, like, whether you're traveling in a car or you're in a metro or you're in a tram, the body is always in motion. And the country and the village is the place where the body sort of,
the life comes
becomes
to a
relaxed.
standstill. Yes,
Also, like, in Bhuvan Shom itself, I mean, we see him sleeping in the cart, like a baby,
yes,
and he's totally sort of defenseless.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Murali Krishna, please go ahead. You have raised your hand.
Uh, okay, thank you. Good evening, all.
Hello.
Thanks, Vijaya, for the nice presentation about
Thank
your
you.
reading of One Show.
Thank you.
Two observations I have to make about this film.
Right.
The film, as we all know, starts with a tribute to Bengal, uh,
Right.
with shots of Satyajit Ray, Ravi Shankar, and others,
Mm,
and followed by a typical Calcutta life, having this senses of demonstration and
mm,
also bomb blast and other things.
right, right, right.
So I think in presenting this view of Calcutta, Mrinal Sen has used for the first time the documentary style, the observation documentary style of the technique in his films. Of course, he repeated in his other films too. From the immediate memory, I can tell that Ek Din Pratidin has such footage also. And in fact, this cinema verite style became one of his hallmarks of his film techniques. And also, we see the background of Shom through this newsreel type footage used. And also, we see the usage of animation. Animation is normally identified with cartoons and children's films and the likes. But here, Sen uses it through telephone, swinging door, and also we notice that a two trace, no, in and out, having labels in and out, and these things immediately establish that Shom is a officer, in fact, a senior officer with a railways. And also we see in another sequence the random shots of Bhuvan Shom doing his exercises. Also his relaxation in a dressing gown with cigar and a cup of coffee. And I think the image of Bhuvan Shom is complete with this. So this type of documentary style of filmmaking and also use of animation was indeed a new what you call method in Indian cinema.
Yeah. Though I'm not so sure if I would call it cinema verite, because in terms of like, I mean, there is a kind of a documentary style, but there is some footage, yes,
No,
in
not the
those.
entire film, not the entire
No,
film.
no,
The documentary.
in the beginning of the film, except for like the shots of Bengal and few sort of shots actually of the protest and the march and the bomb exploding and all. Yeah, but I think he puts it to a different use. Like he's the documentary style in the beginning is really just to set the stage, and also there is a kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of a humor also, like when he's talking about Shonar Bangla, and there's this sort of collage of the famous Bengalis from Swami Vivekanand to Rabindranath Tagore to Satyajit Ray, and when Satyajit Ray's figure comes up, he says Mahan Bengal, and then also where he's talking about how Bhuvan Shome says, कि Bhuvan Shome says उनका बंगालीपन उनमें से नहीं निकल पाता. So there is a kind of self-deprecating kind of humor in terms of like the Bengali-ness. Uh, yeah, I mean, it is a tribute, and at the same time, I feel that it is also like a kind of there is a kind of, you can say an element of humor also. It's tinged with a kind of humor, I would say.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome.
Any more comments, questions? Okay, if there are no more.
Geeta, this is Sanjay here.
Okay, please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, so as you rightly pointed out that after 15 minutes there is a shift in the film when the journey starts.
Right.
So the first song which we hear is by the cart driver. He sings चाहे जो कोई जंगली कहे. Now, if you see, in the film Jangli of Shammi Kapoor, it happens exactly like at the moment, in his family, everybody is stern. His mother is very strict, like disciplinarian, and she doesn't allow um, her children to laugh and to uh, so she is very stern, and she also is expecting her children to be stern. And then there is this moment, then Shami Kapoor goes to this Kashmir, I think, and then after that, and and this song starts. So that is the moment when there is a shift in his personality, that all of a sudden he starts singing, he starts enjoying his life. So exactly here in this film, this song was very relevant. If we it from the point of view of this trope, which is quite often used in films and in literature, which is stern exterior and soft interior. Stern exterior and soft interior. So from outside, the personality is stern, and from inside, it is going to be soft gradually. This is the trope which we have seen in several good films. In fact, I of Khubsurat of Rekha. Uh, she is the main, like, catalyst for this change in the family. She the life the family of her sister, elder sister, and then it is exactly the same stern atmosphere which changes because of the arrival of Rekha. Jab We Met Again, another popular film which also used this trope quite successfully.
Right, right.
Here, when he goes in the wild, he goes in the countryside, and the song starts like "Chahe koi mujhe jangli kahe," and behind that you can see trees and bushes. So from the town, Bhuvan Shome is going to the countryside,
Right,
and
yeah.
how we get this kind of foreshadowing in the film, that how it is going to change the personality of the protagonist. Initially,
Right,
for 15 minutes, that is the portrayal of his personality, which presents him as standoffish, unapproachable.
right, yeah.
But then, through this journey, there is a change in his personality, and there are several catalysts. In fact, the first catalyst can be the cart driver himself.
Right, absolutely,
Starts
yeah.
singing
Yeah,
this song,
yeah.
and of course, Gauri is there,
Uh,
and the rural setting, the way
right. Hmm.
the protagonist interacts with
Hmm.
the space, uh,
Hmm.
Gujarat and
Yeah, right, yeah, yeah.
so after this, there is a change in his personality. Then he is supposed to be more approachable, more fun-loving. Uh,
Hmm.
So-called positive impact on his personalities.
Hmm.
This trope uses the trope of stern exterior and soft interior, uses it in the film, for developing the character.
Hmm.
So and there is an obvious shift, not only in relation to other human beings, but also with the non-human animals. So
Right.
initially, as we start with the theme of hunting, that this
Hmm.
person finally doesn't kill any bird,
Hmm.
and on the, like, uh, what happens, that actually he develops a very friendly, soft kind of relationship, and he starts appreciating the beauty of nature, animals, birds. uh,
Hmm.
so camera obviously plays a big role there.
Hmm.
Our attention focuses on the beauty of the
Hmm.
surroundings.
Hmm.
uh, I think this trope is beautifully used in this film.
Absolutely, yeah, true. But I was also thinking, however, that the song, no, "Chahe koi mujhe jangli kahe," it's also interesting how it is delivered. You know, he's and the car driver is sort of, there's this sort of quirky way in which he's singing that song. It's almost like you don't even understand it. You have to, pay close attention, because he's singing it in a very there's a kind of what do you say? It's like he's singing Hindi in Gujarati, you know. Um, but interestingly, I thought that the power equation between the bureaucrat and the villager in the film, especially in the village, is sort of more equal in a sense, you know. Even though, of course, it seems that Bhuvan Shome may think of himself as like, you know, this city-bred superior person, but the village, they don't think of him as superior. They're laughing at him. They think that, you know, this man is totally clueless. He doesn't know. You know, he doesn't even know this much that he needs to um, change his attire. You know, if he's going as a hunter, you know, the birds are going to run away. So, you know, it's the villagers who are coaching him. You know, he's this person who needs this kind of a coaching. So, and also I was thinking it's like the villages who are far more civilized rather than the city bred Bhuvan show. They are the ones who are civilizing him and, you know, sort of. I mean, of course, he has a soft interior, but you know, we don't know where that soft interior is. It seems to have disappeared for 25 years. He wasn't soft with his son or with his wife. His wife is dead. His son doesn't live with him. But it's in the village with his encounter with, you know, the village people and Gauri and the birds and nature. That finally, that restoration of the self, you know, the softer side finally takes place. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, very good point.
Any other comments, questions? Anyone would like to ask? There is a question in the chat box from Suparna. Is it possible to extract history from such novel-based movies?
I think so. I mean, but depends what kind of history are you looking at, you know? I mean, in the sense that, a film like Bhuvan Shome, it is a document of like, India's new wave cinema. You know, that's how it begins. It is considered like the first film of the Indian new wave cinema. So that kind of history is there. Then there is another kind of history in terms of, you know, the history of train travel, or you know, the history of this encounter with modernity. You know, how modernity is a constantly unfolding what do you say, panorama. You know, it is in the I mean it's the story is not over, you know, and we can go back and look at these encounters, how filmmakers and how fiction writers have used this encounter to bring us face to face with certain with how things are changing. And also interestingly, I mean, a lot of people who have worked on industrial modernity have also argued that, you know, these objects of industrial modernity have actually helped us modernize. You know, so for example, the railways, even I mean the railways were, it was not so easy or straightforward, you know, for people to just get up and, you know, sort of get into the train. It was a long it was a journey just to get into the train. You know, people were very afraid of the train. They were very afraid of the railway engine. It just seemed like such a draconian thing, such a huge black figure, you know, with the smoke and, you know, with all that sound and all. And uh, people didn't, so there is a kind of a normalization that took place in terms of, you know, how um, normalizing of the, what do you say, of the machinery, you know. uh, so people are are trained, are coached in terms of even, you know, train travel. So you know, literature of cinema, it has played this kind of a role in modernizing us, you know. So it's the fiction and the cinema is not just actually recording the encounter of modernization, but they are themselves actually instruments of that play a role in modernizing us. So yes, of course, it is, different kinds of histories can be engaged with.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Anyone else? Okay, if there are no more questions, comments, we will end the session here. Thank you very much, Vijaya, for agreeing to do this for Talking Films Online. Thank you so much. And thank you all for logging in. Good night and have a nice Sunday.
Right. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you so much, Geeta, for having me. And I really, I'm sorry about that earlier glitch. I think with technology, it always something happens like that.
Sure,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I really enjoyed this discussion and the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Night.
Thank you very much, Vidya.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.